Welcome to Varsity Nutrition. I'm Derek Marks, and in this episode, we're going to talk about Diet Analysis 301. This talk does build on Diet Analysis 101 and 201, so I do recommend you watch those first, but either way, you can watch this one now and go back. In this episode, we're going to get into analyzing your intake. So once you've entered your foods in for the day, how do you best look at that data, analyze it, and then possibly make adjustments? So we'll cover things like total energy intake and energy balance, macronutrient intake and macronutrient balance, and take a closer look at your micronutrient intake. We'll finish with a brief conversation on the timing of when you put the data in. It's a little bit nitty-gritty, but it is important to maybe consider when you do this versus always doing it at the same time of day. We'll talk about that. Let's get to the Cronometer. All right, we've made it to Cronometer. We're on our dashboard homepage. Let's go to our daily diary. I've already taken the liberty to enter our foods in for the day. This is not a complete day. This is a breakfast, some oatmeal with blueberries, banana, a little bit of granola. After breakfast, around lunchtime, did about an hour of resistance training, heavy resistance training as it says there. Followed that up with my post-training chocolate milk, and then had a nice lunch which was some eggs and hash browns with a bottle of water. So let's talk about the dietary analysis here. So Cronometer does a great job of summarizing information for us. So under the window with the foods that you entered in it, we can move down here and see this energy summary section. What Cronometer does is in this first circular graph is show how much energy we've consumed so far today. This is not a complete day of food yet, right? So far I've consumed 1,800 calories. If we hover our mouse over this graph, you'll notice a pop-up window just above it. And it gives us some detail about our macronutrients. So the green little part of that bar graph is protein. So far, 283 calories worth of protein, or 16% of my total intake so far. Carbohydrates, the little sort of turquoise section, 800 calories and 45% of my diet overall. And fat is 720 calories and 40% of my diet overall. This is a great section to look at for those of you who have certain macronutrient goals. Like if you're an endurance athlete and you're aiming for 60, 70% of carbs in your diet, so far today, you're a little bit low on carbohydrates. Or if you're more of the power athlete and want to be closer to 50% carbs in your diet, yeah, you're doing a pretty good job. So this is a nice sort of snapshot pop-up window that gives you that macronutrient distribution. If I go one graph to the right here, this is how many calories I've burned today. And I won't get too deep into the details of this, but it adds our basal metabolic rate, so the purple data, adds in exercise, which was my resistance training, 417 calories there. I didn't import any activity. I didn't use my Garmin or any other type of wearable that's, can do that. I didn't do that. And then my activity level for the day. So I enter in low activity level, which means, I don't do tons of things outside of my training. And then I'm sitting at a desk, maybe walking around the house. So my total energy needs for today, unless I add some exercise to it, is going to be 2,865 calories. Cronometer does the math for us and tells us that with this third circle graph here, whether or not we're in a caloric deficit or surplus or balance. And right now we're 1,000 calories below what we need to consume for the day. So at the very least, right now I'm thinking, I need to eat another 1,000 calories today just to be in a caloric balance state. Kind of a nice summary there. If we move over to the right, there's another set of data here. And it's somewhat redundant, but also gives us some new information. So it gives us our energy information again on the very top. It does give us a breakdown of the foods and the calories, which are also just above. But what I like to look at and how I have my profile set up is to track protein. My goal is to consume 175 grams of protein a day. And it tells me right here on this bar that I've consumed 72 grams of protein. And when I hover over it, it shows me where the protein's coming from, which is 41% of my daily need. So as a midday check-in, I know that I need about another 100 grams of protein today to meet my target. Depending on how you set up your profile, this is set up for specific amounts of macronutrients. If you set it up on ratios, it will also give that type of data for your carbohydrates and your fats. But in this case, it doesn't do those percentages because I didn't ask Cronometer to do that. You can set it up however you like. Once we get past this section, we can go down basically to the next page. By default, Cronometer gives you this data here on some selected nutrients. You can customize which nutrients it shows. It just gives you an idea as to how close you are in terms of meeting your daily needs, according to Cronometer, in meeting your intake for those nutrients. I don't mess with customizing that, and so, but you'll notice that if it's yellow, the circle around the nutrient is yellow, you haven't reached your target yet. It has a percent of reaching your target in the middle there. If it's green, that means you've hit your target or exceeded it. So let's scroll down to this data underneath that. And so on the left here, we have more macronutrient and energy data. So it gives more information about total energy intake. The next section here shows carbohydrates, and it breaks carbohydrates down into the different types of carbohydrates: fiber, sugars, sugar alcohols. A little bit TMI, and I'd say this whole left column generally is too much information that's for most of us. The next section below that shows us our fat intake: monounsaturated, saturated, polyunsaturated, and saturated fats. Good to know, but not necessarily something we have to look too closely at unless there are some specific needs to either consume more of or less of specific types of fats and carbohydrates above. The last section here is on proteins. Same type of approach. It tells us total protein, and then it gives us the amount of each individual essential amino acid below that. So it gives us those 9 essential amino acids. Good information. Again, it's depending on your diet. For plant-based folks, sometimes this is important to look at because you may be low in a specific amino acid if you're not careful with your food combining. But in general, that's also a little bit extra information for us. On this right column, we have the vitamins and the minerals, or the micronutrients. And so for both the vitamins and minerals, it uses a similar approach. We have these color-coded bar graphs that is gray if we haven't quite met our target for the day in terms of intake, green if we've met the target or exceeded it. It'll turn up red if you are dangerously low or dangerously high. And there are some nutrients that allow you to get quite high because they're really not toxic. Vitamin B12 is one where the pointer is at right now. B12, you can consume a lot of it and it really doesn't become toxic. So I'm at 317% of my daily need for B12. Not a red flag. This is great information to look at over time. If you have, a good week's worth of Cronometer data, if you're constantly coming up low on a specific micronutrient, that becomes something to be concerned about, and maybe then you consider taking a supplement, right? If you're constantly or consistently meeting your targets for these micronutrients, then a supplement may not be necessary. So really, that's the value of tracking your diet and being careful with how you track it, with entering in all the data correctly. You'll get an idea of where your deficiencies are or where if you're in excess of anything, and then you can make smart decisions to help meet your goals. The one last thing I want to talk about here is when you enter your data for Cronometer. Previously, I mentioned, write down everything you consume throughout the day. Don't try and recall everything at the end of the day because it's hard to remember. It's hard to remember volumes especially, but sometimes even what you ate. So writing down or recording, on a mobile device or something throughout the day is really smart. I recommend athletes, if they have the time and the bandwidth, enter in your data midday. And so that's what I've done here. And the reason I like to do that is it gives me an idea of where I'm at for the day. And I can make adjustments before the day is over. As of right now, I'm pretty low on my protein intake. If it's in the afternoon right now, which it isn't quite, it's midday. But I need to go. I'm aiming for an extra 100 grams of protein. I might not have known that and gotten to dinner, had a little bit of protein, and been like, oh wow, I'm way low on my protein needs, but it's late at night and I can't really fix that. So doing a midday Cronometer entry gives you information to help adjust the rest of your day. I realize that's not always practical, but if it is, try it, because then you can get a better idea of what's going on midday and make those adjustments. If you have to enter it in the end of the day, not a big deal. Thank you.